Today's adventure in the kitchen is something super fun. It's a favorite of ours. It's something that might be really great to make for your family, maybe on like a holiday morning or something like that. But you don't have to have a special reason to make this. You can just make it because it's good and you want it. Today we're making a cherry cream cheese Danish, and it's gonna be spectacular. So the first thing that you need to know about this recipe is the dough actually has to sit in the fridge for at least 2 hours before you can actually create the cream cheese Danish and then bake it. So don't get a craving for this and go, I'm gonna have this in an hour, because it's not gonna work. So that is the first thing you need to know. It has to sit in the fridge for 2 hours before you even do anything with it. Let's get to work on this dough. To this delightful new saucepan that I picked up at a thrift store, we are going to add a half a stick of butter and a half a cup of sour cream. And we are gonna warm that up in here and get it melty. Now we obviously want to keep stirring this because we don't want it to burn. So don't run off and join the circus. Make sure you pay attention and keep stirring this until it's good and melted. So this is good and melty, so now what we are going to do is add a 1/4 cup of sugar to that, and also a half a teaspoon salt. We're gonna stir that in until the sugar is melted and it's good and liquidy. And then we're gonna take this off the heat because this needs to cool down just a little bit before we do the next step. Now, if you've got a gas stove, you can just turn the burner off, but I don't have a gas stove, I have an electric stove, so I actually have to move it off the burner because the electric burner will stay good and hot, and then it overcooks things. And all right, moving that over there so it can cool off. Now we are gonna start the yeast, getting the yeast all good and ready. You can actually do this before you start the rest of the recipe, but in my experience, sometimes the yeast is like poofing up and crawling out of whatever container I have it in before I actually can add it to that sugary mess over there. So I just do the yeast when this is cooling off. So we're gonna do about a 1/4 cup of really warm water. I get it right out of the tap because we have pretty hot water. Some of you may not be able to do that. So that is that. Then we are going to do a tablespoon of yeast and then a half a teaspoon sugar. We mix that up in there a little bit. It's gonna start to get good and poofy in about 5 minutes. Work your magic. I'll check on you in 5 minutes. Singing to recipes helps your food turn out better. I don't know if they taught you that in home ec, but if I was teaching home ec, if they even still have those classes anymore, that's what I would tell you. It has been 5 minutes. Look at how poofy it's getting, good and poofy. Now we're gonna pour everything in my KitchenAid mixer that I got one day at an auction. Pour in all that good, buttery, sugary, sour creaminess into there, right? We're gonna pour in the yeasties, the poofy yeasties. We're gonna add 1 egg to this. Now, this is a room temperature egg. It is fresh from the coop, and when you have farm eggs, you always should break them into a bowl or a cup before you use them. Just because, friends, just because. It's a good egg. So now, it's going in there. Go mix this in a little bit. And then, my friends, we are going to add in a couple cups of flour. Now, flour in a recipe is always an estimation because depending on what the weather's doing outside, you might need more. And it is delightfully rainy today, so we're probably gonna end up using a little bit more flour than normal. I lied. We're not gonna need any extra flour. It only did that because I put that on camera already. What the heck? Somehow, I ended up with a pretty tough dough here. And not a super sticky dough. And we don't want a super sticky dough because one time I made this super sticky and it was a disaster. Everybody still ate it, but so the dough is kind of this consistency. And even though I'm holding it right now, I'm gonna put it back in the bowl and we're gonna put it in the fridge for a couple hours. It needs to chill before you do the next step. So a couple hours, few hours, whenever you decide you wanna make this again, you actually can let this sit in the fridge overnight if this is something that you want to then create in the morning because you're gonna make a special breakfast. That works just fine. But I'm actually making this because my youngest is coming home to visit and he needs a special treat, probably because I'm mom and that's what you do, right? So let's get this in the fridge. Finding a spot in the fridge is always fun. All right, rest well, little dough. I'll be back. All right, it has been a couple hours, and sometimes what happens in a video is a recipe you've made a bazillion times before doesn't turn out exactly the same. This dough is super, super, like, solid. I've never had this happen before, but we're just gonna go with it. It's usually a lot softer than this. But we're just gonna go with it. I'm rolling it out right now. It should be, I don't know why I'm just, the consistency is a little off this time. When you make it, it's probably gonna be a little softer. But mine is not soft. But we're still gonna go with it. I'm gonna keep rolling this. Oh my gosh, it should not be like this, okay? What the, oh! Should not be like this. Okay, let's try this. Muscles! I'm real excited to see what happens with this particular Danish that I'm making. This is so not how it turns out. What if I have to make another one? This is like a workout. What kind of dough have we created here? I don't even know if this is gonna braid correctly. Y'all in YouTube land are gonna see my real kitchen now. And what happens when things don't quite turn out. Ugh. So the next thing we're going to do, we have a stick. Wow, the lighting in here is not awesome. It's 4:18 p.m. and it's already getting dark outside, and so the lighting in my kitchen is atrocious. Y'all, we're just gonna go with it. So I have, what do I got here? I have one 8-ounce brick of softened cream cheese in here. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar and, like a half, where am I? And like a half teaspoon of vanilla. Then we are gonna mix that up. I don't even know if we're gonna need to use my hand mixer. This is actually pretty soft. Depends how silky smooth you want it to be. But I guess we're already punting with this particular Danish. Now, if you want to make this a cherry cream cheese Danish, you're gonna need to get half a can of pie filling. You could do apple, you could do strawberry, you could do blueberry, you could do any kind you want. We prefer cherry. You also don't have to put any fruit in it. You can just do a cream cheese Danish. I'm gonna go grab a can of cherry pie filling because I forgot that. Ta-da! Cherry pie filling. Okay, so now we are going to take a look at this crazy train wreck dough here. And what we're gonna do is we're going to figure out how to make the braidy fancy top. And the way you do that is we're actually going to imagine that this is kind of divided in thirds, and we're gonna get a knife. And we're going to imagine, okay, so we're gonna imagine that there's this middle part where we're gonna put the filling, and we are going to cut strips. This is kind of hard to do holding the camera, but we're gonna cut strips on the sides like that. Kind of like that. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So make sure you leave a section in the center that is not cut and try to cut straight across. This looks really awkward and it's not normally how I do it, but life is different in video land. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Also, you should turn on your oven to 350. take your awesome filling and we're going to put it in the middle. Glop it on there. Wow, I left a lot of chunks in there. But you know what? It's gonna be delicious. And the people who love you, who are going to eat this yummy treat, they just want the yummy treat. They don't care. Go ahead and add some cherries on there. Remember, we just want to keep everything in the middle. It's gonna take about half a can, and then that'll be plenty. If you make it too goopy in the middle, it's gonna do this explosion while you're baking, and everything will come out the sides. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens this time, because my soup series went so well with no mistakes that now everything that I bake is gonna be just crazy. In the most awkward camera angle ever, I hope this camera doesn't like fall down into the Danish, but that would be a great humor piece. I'm gonna show you how you go about braiding it. So we've got all these strips, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take them and we're gonna fold them across, kind of on top of each other, one after the other, and it's gonna make a delightful braid like that. See what's happening there? There is no good camera angle to get this at. Let me try again. Oops. Like that. Like that. So we're just basically going side to side. Oh, we ran out of pieces at the end here. That's fine. Ain't nobody gonna care. Then we're gonna try and just seal that up at the end. Try your best to get it sealed, because what you don't seal is just all gonna pop out. So I've got this, and I never know what to do with the ends really. Sometimes I do what I like to call a little baby Moses thing. Moses in the basket, and I don't know why I call it that, but I just take the ends and I bring them down here and make sure everything's kind of pinched off. I'm sure there's a much more artistic way to do that, but that's what I got. So that's kind of what it looks like. Not Instagram worthy, but we're gonna go with it and we're gonna see what happens. Now we have a jelly roll pan, parchment paper, and depending on how your dough turned out, you may be able to just pick this up. Otherwise, you can use a couple spatulas, kind of get it up there. My husband has a couple Blackstone spatula turner things that are really long, so sometimes we actually have to use both of those, one on each end, to get this up and onto the thing. But the great thing about this dough turning out as it did is I can lift it up pretty easy. Hopefully it looks really awesome when it comes out of the oven. So this is gonna go in the oven for 35 to 40 minutes. I am wildly excited to see what this train wreck Danish is going to turn out like. Maybe I should rename the recipe, Train Wreck Danish. Maybe that should be the name of this video. Is that what I ended up naming the video? Stay tuned. All right, are you ready to see how it turned out? Okay, get that in there. Oh, that's actually not bad. Oh, it's a little, the dough is a little more, I don't know how to, it's significant. It's a little tougher, and I don't mean tougher like in a bad thing, but normally when I make this, the dough is really soft, and this is not super soft, but I'll think it's gonna eat. Let's make some icing to put on top. All right, so icing is not difficult. I've got about a cup of powdered sugar in there. We are going to add a wee bit of vanilla. We'll go about there. That looks good, sure. And then we're gonna add a little bit of milk, okay? And the thing with making icing is that you gotta add the liquid a little bit at a time. Don't just gush it all in there, because it ain't gonna work for you. So like literally just little bits of milk, and then whisk her up. And this is all about getting it to the consistency you want, whatever that is. Now, you look at this, you got this ball of like not quite icing yet. Don't go and dump a 1/4 cup of milk in there because you're gonna ruin it. Just do a little bit at a time. And then, cause it will change. It's gonna change. Yeah, like that's probably gonna be just perfect. You get that in there a little bit. In my not well lit kitchen, in my next life, I will have beautiful lighting and an island in my kitchen. And I say my next life because I'm never moving from this house. So y'all just gonna have to deal with my very real, not YouTuber worthy kitchen. There ain't nothing fancy about this. We can just drizzle with our whisk. Gonna be so fancy. Look at this. Look at this. It's all gonna turn out just fine. Look at that. Might be a little more bready and a little less Danish pastry. But I bet you all, if I invited you over to my house right now, I bet you would sit and have a cup of coffee and enjoy this with me. Sometimes train wrecks turn out. I'm going to eat this delightful Danish. Well, not the whole thing. Looks terrible, truly. It passes. It's edible. It's more than edible. The dough is a little heavier than I would like it. I think I figured out what I did. When I grabbed an egg to use, I grabbed a really little egg. It was one of the new chickens, so a new egg, smaller than usual, and so I think that's why it turned out a little thicker and a little more dense than normal. But as you can see, I'm not dying from eating this. And I will probably have a second piece. So I guess the train wreck wasn't a complete disaster. And we've learned that when things go wrong, you just keep going. Because it might actually turn out.